जय जय श्री राधे। श्री वल्लभाधीश की जय, श्री गिरिराज धरन की जय। Jai Shri Krishna. Today is the 15th day of readings, commencing Varta number 5, the story of Rajo Kshatrani. Bhav Prakash, the inner meaning. In the eternal Leela, Rajo Kshatrani is Sri Lalitaji's Sakhi named Ratikala. She was highly erudite in the art of the pure love of Sri Thakurji and Sri Swaminiji, and highly skilled in serving and facilitating their loving pastimes. She was always exclusively absorbed in this mood. She prepared whatever Sri Swaminiji required, for example, warm milk at night time. But the seva of giving it to Sri Swaminiji falls within Sri Lalitaji's domain. Here on earth, Rajo also performed this service of giving Sri Acharyaji warm milk at night, but in the Leela, Ratikala had the burning desire to serve the milk to Sri Swaminiji by her own hand. Although she knew that only Sri Lalitaji had that right, she still craved for that seva of serving Sri Swaminiji with her own hands. It is Sri Lalitaji's seva, she thought, so how can I possibly do it? Sri Lalitaji is a very dear go-between for Sri Thakurji and Sri Swaminiji, and helps beautifully to accomplish all their pastimes. In this way, her heart craved. Sri Acharyaji, who embodies Sri Swaminiji, wanted to fulfill her craving. How? For example, there was a celibate Brahmin named Narayan Das. Sri Gokul Chandramaji instructed Sri Acharyaji to eat some of the rice pudding that he had cooked. Sri Acharyaji asked him how. The rest of the story is told in the tales of Sri Gokul Chandramaji's pastimes. In this story, we see Rajo Kshatrani. Sri Acharyaji was always accepting the unasakari dishes that she had prepared because he knew the relationship that they had in the eternal Leela. She may have been a Kshatrani by caste, but she was an extremely pure and faithful devotee, and so had captured Sri Acharyaji's heart. In such a state of pure love, all scriptural restrictions fall by the wayside. In this way he taught her the way of true love, and so the barriers were broken down. Absorbed in the bliss of the pastime, he accepted her preparations, and thus her craving was satisfied. Part 1. Rajo would daily prepare foodstuffs for Sri Acharyaji and bring them to him. He accepted the offerings. One day, it was the time for the annual remembrance of Sri Acharyaji's father's, Lakshman Bhatt, passing. Sri Acharyaji had invited some Brahmins to come to eat. There was not enough ghee for the purpose. Sri Acharyaji sent one Vaishnava to Rajo's house to fetch some. The Vaishnava went to Rajo and told her that Sri Acharyaji had asked for some ghee to be sent over. Rajo asked the Vaishnavas for what purpose Sri Acharyaji required it, and they told her it was needed for the meal that the Brahmins would be fed for the Shraddha ceremony. Rajo immediately replied that she had no ghee. The Vaishnava returned to Sri Acharyaji and told him that Rajo denied having any ghee. Sri Acharyaji told the Vaishnava to go back to Rajo and angrily demand that she give some. This is exactly what the Vaishnava did, but she still refused to hand any over. She said, "I have no ghee. Where am I supposed to bring it from?" The Vaishnava relayed this news to Sri Acharyaji, and he then got some from another source and did what he had to do with it. That evening, Rajo made her usual preparations for Sri Acharyaji, but he refused to speak to her. Rajo asked him, "O Maharaj, I know that embodied souls are full of impurities, but what offence have I committed to annoy you so much that you will not let me see you?" Sri Acharya replied, "Today was my father's Shraddha ceremony. Why did you not send the ghee I needed?" Rajo told him that she had no ghee that she could have given him, and he retorted by asking her, how had she then been able to make the evening preparations without any ghee? Rajo argued, "Maharaj, you had ghee in your house, so why did you not use that?" Sri Acharyaji replied that ghee belonged to Sri Thakurji and therefore could not be used for any other purpose. Rajo asked him, "Well, who resides in my home? Even more important than Sri Thakurji is you. How could I take ghee set aside for your use related to Sri Thakurji's Leela for a Shraddha ceremony? I am not Lakshman Bhatt's servant. I am your servant, and you asked me to give you the ghee in order to test me. First you told a Vaishnava to take ghee from me for a worldly purpose, so I refused. Then you were thinking that you needed urgently to feed the Brahmins, and so you sent an angry message. Then I knew you wanted it for some Vedic ritual, because within the path of grace, anger is not an accepted way. In the path of grace, everything hinges on love in the heart, but in the lawful path, a thing must be used within a certain time, and so it is the thing that counts, not the bhava, and therefore anger may ensue. I took no heed of that demand either. If you had asked a third time, and asked for ghee for Sri Krishna's Seva, then I would have sent some. And if you had told that Vaishnava to tell me that I could give the ghee without any obstruction to my grace-filled path, then I would have sent it. Why would I purposely fall into a well? You taught me all of this, and therefore, according to your teachings, I did not send the ghee. You are the inspirer of the intelligence. While sitting in my heart, you yourself told me not to hand over any ghee, although outwardly you seem to be demanding it. I am your unalloyed servant, so please be merciful to me. Bhav Prakash. It has been taught in the Shikshapatra that according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Thakurji makes commands affecting 3 areas of consideration. One concerns the worldly situation, and its result also concerns the worldly plane, such as taking care of the family and bodily comfort. Its result is just that perpetuation of the worldly involvements. The second type is concerned with scriptural considerations such as pilgrimage, worship rituals, and so on. The reward is reaching a heavenly planet for a limited amount of time. The third, or spiritual type, is concerned with service to the Lord and association with devotees. Its reward is realization of one's relationship to Sri Krishna. Rajo refused to give the ghee on all 3 levels. Part 1 continued. Hearing her reasoning, Sri Acharyaji was very pleased and met with her face to face. She offered him some preparations and asked him to accept them, but he replied that today was the anniversary of his father's passing, and so he could only eat once. She objected that these preparations were in no way related to the worldly home, and so he should partake. Bhav Prakash. Here the sentiment is that these offerings were to one's own Sri Thakurji and thus directly related to the Leela, so why pay attention to worldly rules? Sri Acharyaji recognized her as steeped in purely grace-filled mood, with no concern for worldly or scriptural rulings, so he did partake. The poet Paramananda Dasji has written, O Sri Krishna, I am remembering your pastimes. When Sri Acharyaji so much as heard this line, he spent a full 3 days in a state of total absorption into Sri Krishna's pastimes. He was thus absorbed in his beloved Lord's pastimes as he partook of Rajoji's offerings. Her wish was fulfilled. Such an incomparably great devotee she was. Hari Teri Leela Ki Suddhi Aave is the first line of that pad. Part 1 continued. On her insistence, Sri Acharyaji accepted her offerings that day. She was the recipient of great grace from Sri Acharyaji, and there is truly no end to her story. Thus concludes Varta 5, the story of Rajo Kshatrani. Thus concludes the 15th day of reading. Shiva Labhadisha ki jai ho. Buddhi praraka Krishnasya Pada Padmam Prasidatu. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Jai Shri Radhe.